The other is never overly contract the muscle in your forearm. Of course, it is not possible, even minimally, to stretch a finger without contracting the muscles in your forearm. The reason being that the primary muscles that move your fingers are in the area under discussion, in your forearm. Nevertheless, it is up to you to be aware of contraction in this area at all times and to minimize it whenever it is possible. One way to control involuntary contractions of your muscles is consciously to tighten the muscle and then relax it. Let us experiment with this on the forearm muscle. Feel the muscle in its softened condition. Now make a fist and feel how the muscle becomes contracted. Now relax the fist again and you'll see that the muscle is soft. Now try to contract that muscle voluntarily without making the fist. Now relax it. If you can succeed in doing that, you have gained control over that muscle in the forearm. Of course, your goal in playing the piano is to gain conscious control over all the muscles of your playing mechanism. To test the correct balance between taut fingers and the rest of your playing mechanism, you might perform this experiment. Stretch all of your fingers and spread them apart. Make your palms hollow as though you were holding balls within them. Now move your wrists up and down while keeping your fingers taut. Continue to keep your fingers taut and move the forearms up and down by means of the elbow joint. Now with your fingers still taut, move the upper arm forward and backward by means of the shoulder joint. Now, a law of nature says that for every joint of movability, we need a joint of stability. So that when you move your wrist up and down, keep one joint removed from it firm, namely your elbow joint, and you'll be able to move it much faster. Now, when you move your elbow joint, keep your shoulder joint down and firm, and you'll be able to move it much faster. Now, finally, when you move the shoulder joint, the waistline remains firm, and you can move your upper arm forward and backward very quickly. Before we leave the fingers, it would be a good idea to examine the joints and determine what part they play in activating the keys. Notice that the second, third, fourth, and fifth fingers have 3 visible joints. The second joints are often referred to as the mid joints, and the third joints are called, as you know, the knuckles, and sometimes they're called the bridge of the hand. Now, let us examine the thumb. Notice that there are 2 visible joints. But where is the third joint? Has nature betrayed us? Well, it may appear to be so, but actually the third joint is hidden in the wrist. It is very important to know this because the articulation of the thumb is governed by this hidden third joint. This joint enables the thumb to move vertically, horizontally, and rotationally. In my book, With Your Own 2 Hands, there are thumb exercises on page 165. They are designed to promote flexibility at this hidden third joint. Now let us review some of these exercises. Depress 4 black notes with curved fingers and allow the arm to bed itself down in the key beds. Don't be afraid to continue pressure and see that the pressure is centered on the pads of the fingers. Now with your arms grounded, your thumb is now free to move from the hidden third joint. Line up your arm so that when the thumb comes under the fourth finger, the hand is comfortable. Otherwise, you will be straining the thumb to get under the fourth finger. Now begin by just raising the thumbs vertically from the hidden third joint. Continue the pressure of your arm. Always play with dynamics. Your intention being to play everything musically, even an exercise. Then you can do variations of this exercise by doing the following. Your fingers are capable of more motions than you can imagine. Quite obviously, they move vertically. The lower the wrist, the higher the bridge knuckle, and the more curved the fingers, the better articulation. But your fingers can also elongate themselves and slide across the keys, producing a sharp staccato effect, such as is needed in Schumann's Catch Me from Kinderzähnen. Your fingers also move laterally and rotationally. For example, in a G minor harmonic minor scale, they have to stretch laterally and rotationally between 3 and 4. And when we play the simplest melody, your fingers are making rotational motions by adapting motions of the forearm, which we are going to discuss later. But in the opening of this Clementi sonatina, the first note is a vertical stroke. The E goes from left to right, the C goes from right to left, and the G goes from right to left and up. And we have this beautiful choreographic movement. Now, unless you have large hands or are naturally endowed with wide extensions between your fingers, it is always a good idea to do extension exercises as sort of warm-ups before you're practicing. Now, I have extension exercises in my book on page 170, but this exercise that I'm about to show you is not in my book, but it's a very valuable one. Place the second and the third fingers on C and E and line up the fingers. Lining up the fingers means don't do this, neither do you do that, but you keep them in a line, in this case on the tips of the keys. Make the fingers parallel to the floor and point all the fingers down. Now very gently with your left hand, press on the bridge or the knuckles of your fingers, but don't hurt yourself. Just do it very gently. And what we're going to do is rotate the fingers, the palm, and the forearm from right to left. This action loosens this area and will thus increase the extension between the fingers. Now, if your finger allows, try the interval of a fourth and do the same thing. Just twist gently back and forth, being careful not to hurt yourself. Now, if you're very brave, you can try the interval of the fifth. And when you finish with 2 and 3, be sure to do 3 and 4, pointing the other fingers down, and then 4 and 5, and never neglect doing exercises with your left hand. In fact, the left hand can be considered the stepchild of pianists. So it would be a very good idea to begin all exercises with your left hand so as not to neglect it. The arm constantly vies with the fingers for supremacy. A good resolution, therefore, to be adopted by all pianists is, my fingers always win, and what is more, they do everything. Your forearm acts as a sort of steering mechanism for the palms and the fingers by means of vertical motions, such as in Run, Run by Octavio Pinto, lateral motions, such as in Opus 10, number 1 by Beethoven, and rotational motions, such as in the Fantasia in C minor by Mozart. The forearm adapts to the needs of the fingers and not the other way around. In order thoroughly to understand forearm rotation, you need to know 4 words, and for this, we have to roll up the sleeve and show that we play the piano with something more than just our soul. Now, the 4 words are radius, ulna, supination, and pronation. Now we're going to take one of them at a time. The radius is the bone that is in line with your thumb and goes the entire length of your forearm. The ulna is the bone that is in line with your 5th finger and also goes the entire length of your forearm. Now, when the palms are up, the radius and the ulna are lying parallel to each other. But when you turn your hand over to play the piano, the radius and the ulna cross over each other. This condition is called pronation. This is called supination. Think of supine. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting, but the paintings in museums of saints, for example, show them in the supine position. Jesus, as an example, is shown blessing the multitudes with his palms up, and Buddha is shown in this position. This is the more relaxed position of the arm, the supination position. When we turn the hand over, the pronation wants to resist us, and so going back and forth between supination, pronation, constitutes the rotational motions of the forearm. The most important thing to learn about rotation is to allow the fingers themselves to select the degree of supination and pronation which they need. For example, in beginning Für Elise by Beethoven, one does not just allow the fingers to lie limply on the keys like overcooked noodles and just rotate, but the fingers being taught select the degree of supination and pronation that they need for their task. Now, slower practicing or playing invites larger motions. The faster you play, however, the law of economy insists that your movements be smaller. When, for example, you play the Prelude in B-flat by Bach, you can practice it slowly with large motions. But as you you go fast, the motions become very small indeed. To be very specific, it is virtually impossible to use one part of the playing mechanism without involving a whole network of other moving parts. We have saved for the end what I believe to be the most important movements in piano playing, the forward-backward movements of your upper arms.